Hello learners, I am welcoming you once more in my lecture series on modern optics for Physics 1. Myself Dr. Sucharita Bhattacharya, subject teacher of physics from Guru Nanak Institute of Technology, Kolkata, is delivering my lecture session for first semester BTech course, and the students under considerations are from the streams of computer science and engineering, information technology and food technology. Today, I am starting the lecture 3 of my lecture series on modern optics. Now, let us take a look what is there. The students, you know that right now we are in the module 5 on modern optics, and we have started the submodule 5.01 on laser. So, today's lesson will be the third lesson of this topic on laser. Now, today we are going to discuss all details about the great physicist Sir Albert Einstein in the form of his contribution in this laser technology and laser devices, Einstein's A and B coefficients and Einstein's equations, the implications of Einstein's equations, and definitely after that I will go for few university questions on the portions I have covered so far. Okay. So the questions to be addressed in today's session are exactly what about Einstein's contribution here. And definitely this part, today I will sum up what I have done in the last session, the last portions particularly highlighting Einstein's contribution. Okay. Then what about Einstein's AB coefficients? Very famous one. So what about that? How to define them? Next, how to derive Einstein's equations? Very, very famous. Then we will go for what about the implications of Einstein's equations, which are actually the backbone of the laser technology and laser operations, the implications of Einstein's equations. Next, we will go for the different university questions on the portions I have covered so far. Okay. Now, let us move to the Einstein's role in laser operation. The great physicist Sir Albert Einstein. Actually, he is considered to be the key person for the invention of laser, as he described the process of stimulated emission of radiation, which we have discussed in the last class in very, very detail, which is the basic of laser technology and laser operation. That is the phenomenon of stimulated emission of radiation, and that was given none other than, rather predicted by none other than Einstein way back in 1917. Actually, it is found that a photon hitting some atom may not only supply energy to this atom for an absorption process, but also it can send already excited atom back to a state with lower energy with emission of an additional photon. In the last class, we have seen that atom may be in the lower energy state, atom may be in the higher energy state. Normally, the atom remains in the lower energy state. With the help of photon in the form of stimulating agent, we normally get the atom to the higher energy state in the form of absorption. But in addition to absorption, in presence of photon, atom from excited state may come back to lower energy state with the emission of additional photon through stimulated emission of radiation. So this additional photon creation rather, or the development, is the most important part here. Now the crucial aspect is Einstein's insight that the additional photon should have same energy, move in the same direction and phase as the incoming photon, thus processing light amplification. Because light amplification is nothing but the increase in number of photons, the quantum of light energy in several stages, and if all of them are in the same energy, move in the same direction and same phase, then definitely we achieve light amplification, and that was the insight of that great man, Sir Albert Einstein. Also, he realized that a net gain in optical power in the assembly of atoms can only occur if there is so-called population inversion. Now, what about population inversion? We have seen in the last class that there should be more number of atoms in the higher energy state to that in the lower energy state, so that the effect of stimulated emission can exceed the stimulated absorption, and it is possible to achieve the light amplification. That means it is told that a net gain of optical power, obviously laser is a highly intensified optical output, so there you need a net gain in optical power, and for that purpose we need the population inversion, which we have discussed in very detail, but it was the realization of Sir Einstein. And definitely how to achieve the population inversion? It is through pumping. That pumping can be done in various ways. We will discuss in due time. For a laser, an additional component is required, that is in the form of resonator or optical oscillator, where a light beam is, that is the photon, is reflected back and forth in the amplifying medium known as the active medium, which can at least compensate for the power losses in each round trip. That means these are the four basic steps. These are the four basic steps where Einstein's concept of stimulated emission of radiation comes into play one after another, because steps are all dependent upon these crucial phases, that is the Einstein stimulated emission of radiation, which is given by Einstein. In fact, it is found this principle was first demonstrated with microwaves, not with visible light or the ordinary light with which we are right now discussing the laser, but it was first demonstrated with microwaves in the form of maser. Maser means microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. And by the groundbreaking work of Shallow, Towns, and Myman, way back in 1960, it could also be applied to light, and we are getting the laser, what we are discussing right now. That means Einstein's concept of stimulated emission of radiation is the key behind the laser operation, but it was first demonstrated not with visible light or light emission, by light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, rather than in the form of maser, that is microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. And after that, it is now becoming applicable to the case of light since 1960. Clear? Now, what about general laser theory in the form of Einstein's coefficients and Einstein's equations? For that purpose, let us consider an assembly of large number of atoms in thermal equilibrium at temperature T. The atoms have two allowed energy states. Each and every atom has two allowed energy states, one and 2, with number of atoms per unit volume, that is population as N1 and N2 respectively, and energy of the atomic states are E1 and E2 respectively. Let psi nu be the electromagnetic radiation energy per unit volume, that is energy density of radiation for frequency nu. That means you are injecting a photon in the system with energy E2 minus E1 equal to h nu. Corresponding energy density of radiation is represented by psi nu. Now, we have already discussed in our earlier classes that any photon in the lower energy state, if interact with this, any atom in the lower energy state, say out of this N1, if interacts with this photon h nu, it will absorb the energy of this photon and get excited to the level marked E2, because the frequency of the photon is E2 minus E1 by H. That means here the atom's energy is E1 and here the photon's energy is E2 minus E1. So if E1 absorbs the energy E2 minus E1, the net energy of the atom will be E2 and atom will ultimately move to the upper energy state 2 in the form of absorption or stimulated absorption, because incident photon has stimulated the atom to absorb its energy to go to higher energy excited state. Now the rate of this absorption of radiation of frequency from state 1 to state 2 obviously will depend on N1 as well as psi nu. The rate of the absorption obviously will depend on N1, the number of atoms in the lower energy state, as well as the energy of the photon in the form of psi nu. So the number of absorption 1 to 2 per unit time, that means rate of absorption per unit volume, that means absorption density, rate of absorption per unit volume is given by V1 to N1 psi nu. That means this is the absorption from 1 to 2. It depends on N1 into psi nu. And what about the constant of proportionality? It is very, very special. Just take a look. It is represented by B12. Why the suffix 1, 2? Because this is the case of absorption. So transition from 1 to 2, it is also called stimulated absorption because photon stimulated the atom to absorb its energy and to go to higher energy excited state. V12, this constant of proportionality is called Einstein's coefficient for absorption of radiation. V12 is called Einstein's coefficient for stimulated absorption or absorption of radiation, because stimulated absorption always is absorption, because without stimulating agent no absorption is possible. Okay. So the Einstein's coefficient for stimulated absorption depends upon the characteristics of both the energy levels, that means 1 and 2. So out of the 3 possible transitions, the first we have discussed in the last class, the first transition we have already taken care in this theoretical part. Let us now consider the atom as in the upper energy state E2. Now it can come down to lower energy state by the reverse process, obviously the emission of radiation at a frequency nu. But compared to the absorption process, emission can take place in 2 different ways. When the atom actually de-excites, it can make a radiative transition either through spontaneous emission or through stimulated emission. The 2 processes are known or familiar to you. Let us now use these 2 processes in the theoretical consideration. So compared to the absorption process, there are 2 ways for the emission, that is the reverse process. One is the spontaneous emission, other is the stimulated emission. That means in case of transitions from 2 to 1, we have 2 possible processes. Okay. Let us now take a look what about that. Now, this is the situation we have already considered, that 1 and 2, 2 energy states with populations of atoms N1 and N2 with energy values E1 and E2, and the atom now is in the higher energy state 2. So from here, atom will come down to lower energy state 1 through transition of 2 to 1, either through spontaneous emission or through stimulated emission. Now, if it is the case of spontaneous emission, the number of spontaneous emission per unit volume per unit time is given by A21 N2. That means the dependence is on N2. N2 means number of atoms in the higher energy state, because already your atoms are in the higher energy state and you are considering the transition from 2 to 1. But mind it, it is the case of spontaneous emission. So no external agent in the form of photon, that is psi nu, is present here. So number of spontaneous emission per unit time per unit volume is proportional to N2, and the proportionality constant is A to 1, because here suffix to 1 we have used, as this is the case of emission from 2 to 1, and it is a spontaneous emission, so we are using a different symbol in the form of A21. So here A21 is known as Einstein's coefficient of spontaneous emission of radiation. The previous one was V12, Einstein's coefficient of stimulated absorption, but here it is A21, Einstein's coefficient of spontaneous emission of radiation. But in addition to the spontaneous emission of radiation, there is the possibility of stimulated emission of radiation. In that case, what will happen? In case of stimulated emission of radiation, the photon energy must be present in the system. In presence of the electromagnetic radiation, the atoms may come down from lower energy state to higher energy state, and in that case, we are encountering stimulated emission of radiation with the emission of a second photon, because this is the injecting photon, and at the output what you are getting, that photon will be present there. In addition to that, due to the emission from 2 to 1 of the atoms, another photon will come down. Okay, so starting with one photon, in case of stimulated emission, we can get two photons for one atom interacting with this photon in the energy state 2. So the number of stimulated emission of radiation per unit volume per unit time is proportional to N2, the number of atoms in higher energy state, as well as psi nu, that means the electromagnetic radiation energy density. And proportionality constant is V21. Just take a look. It is the case of stimulated emission, so definitely V will come, and it is the case of emission, so 2 to 1 in the suffix will come. So number of stimulated emission of radiation per unit volume per unit time is V21 into psi nu, and here V21 is Einstein's coefficient of stimulated emission of radiation, because the transition I already mentioned 2 to 1. So in total now we encountered 3 transitions, which we already discussed in our previous classes, but it is in the form of Einstein's equations derivations. Okay, one is the stimulated absorption. The absorption coefficient is V12. Second one is spontaneous emission. The emission coefficient is A21. Third one is the stimulated emission. The emission coefficient is V21. Now, at thermal equilibrium, the number of upward transitions, that means 1 to 2, must be equal to the number of downward transitions, that is 2 to 1. We already considered at the beginning that our system is in thermal equilibrium at temperature T. So the number of upward transitions 1 to 2 must be equal to the number of downward transitions 2 to 1. That means V1 to N1 psi nu, that is the upward transition, equal to A21 N2 plus B21 N2 psi nu. This is the downward transition due to spontaneous emission. This is the downward transition due to stimulated emission. So total upward transition must be equal to the total downward transition. Let us now find out the value of psi nu by rearranging this term on the left hand side. What you will find, psi nu equal to A21 N2 divided by B1 to N1 minus B21 N2, because you are rearranging the second term on the right to the left to have the value of psi nu. Now let us divide both the numerator and denominator of this expression by N2 to have N21 by B1 to N1 by N2 minus B21. So divide the numerator and denominator by N2. It will be 1. So A21 then V12 N1 by N2 minus V21. The equation number 1. Now, according to Boltzmann's distribution law, number of atoms in energy states E1 and E2 in thermal equilibrium at temperature T are given by N1 equal to N0 e to the power minus E1 by kT and N2 equal to N0 e to the power minus E2 by kT, which we have discussed in very detail in the last class in the form of exponentially decaying function, where N1 is the number of atoms per unit volume, that is population in energy state 1. N0 is the corresponding population in ground state. E1 is the energy in the state 1. K is the Boltzmann constant. Similarly, N2 is the population of the atoms in energy state 2. And in terms of the N0 and KT, the exponential decaying function, we are representing it. Okay. Now take the ratio as per the requirement of equation number 1, N1 by N2. So let us take the ratio N1 by N2. This will cancel out, and what you will get? E to the power E2 minus E1 by KT. Because this will be minus, so it will be plus e to the power E2 minus E1 by KT equal to e to the power H nu by KT, where E2 minus E1 equal to H nu. We already have discussed number of times. H is the Planck's constant and nu is the frequency of emission of radiation. So from 1, by putting the value of N1 by N2, we can write psi nu equal to A21 by B12. Now N1 by N2 equal to e to the power H nu by KT minus B21. So equation number 1 now transform to this new form using the relative population of the two energy states, that is N1 by N2 expression. Now A21 by B12, let us take common. From numerator A21, from denominator B12, we are getting inside 1 divided by e to the power H nu by KT minus B21 by B12. So this is the equation number 2. Now, an ideal two-level system, very, very important, listen very carefully. An ideal two-level system, considering all possible transitions, must result in a total radiation similar to black body radiation. Here you have considered the two-level system where all 3 possible transitions are under consideration, and your system is in thermal equilibrium. So definitely the total radiation expression what you got in the form of equation 2, that is psi nu, represent the total radiation. And in physics, the total radiation is termed more popularly as black body radiation. So from this ideal two-level system of atoms, we are getting the total radiation in the form of black body radiation. Now, according to Planck's law, the energy density of radiation at frequency nu is given by psi nu equal to 8 pi h nu cube by c cube into 1 by e to the power h nu by kt minus 1. You all are very much familiar with this Planck's law expression. Now, get the genius idea of Einstein that total radiation from atomic system, he got that expression, and that expression is now compared to the Planck's law, the energy density of radiation at frequency nu for black body radiation. So these are the now 2 equivalent expressions as considered by Einstein. These 2 are equivalent expressions. One you got from two-level system and two-level atomic system rather, and it is for the black body radiation you got, and this is given by Planck's law, Planck's idea, and we got it from Einstein's idea of stimulated emission of radiation. Now compare them. What you are getting? B21 by B12 equal to 1. B21 by B12 equal to 1. That means B21 equal to B12. Very, very important. B21 equal to B12. Just take a look. The two stimulated coefficients are equal. The two stimulated coefficients, one for absorption and the other for, this is for absorption and this is for emission, both are found to be equal. Next one, just take a look here. This portion is exactly same. So what about these two parts? A21 by B12 equal to 8 pi h nu cube by c cube. So by comparing 2 and 3, you are getting another expression. A21 by B12 equal to 8 pi h nu cube by c cube. That means A21 equal to B21 as B12 equal to B21. B21 8 pi h nu cube by c cube. So A21 equal to B21 8 pi h nu cube by c cube and B21 equal to B12. These two equations are known as all famous Einstein's equations in laser operations. Equations A and B represent famous Einstein's equations in laser operations, and you are getting the idea that basically these two equations, they are relating the Einstein's coefficients. Here you are getting the spontaneous emission coefficient is related to stimulated emission coefficient, and here both the stimulated coefficients are related. One is absorption one, other is the emission one. It should be noted that the description of thermodynamic equilibrium between atoms and radiation field helped Einstein to predict the existence of stimulated emission. Very, very important point. Already few minutes back, I gave you that idea. And here you take a look at this statement. It should be noted that the description of thermodynamic equilibrium between atoms and radiation field helped Einstein to predict the existence of stimulated emission. So just get the idea how much genius and intelligent he was. Now, the implications of Einstein's coefficients and equations. I already mentioned that Einstein's coefficients governs the rate of absorption and emission of photons by atoms. Einstein's coefficients, three coefficients we have defined so far, they govern the rate of absorption and emissions of photons by atoms. From the first one, we got B21 equal to B12. That means the probability of stimulated emission is same as that of stimulated absorption. The probability of stimulated emission and stimulated absorptions are same, exactly same. Now, which one will dominate? It will depend on the relative populations of the atoms. If there are more atoms in the higher energy state, then definitely stimulated emission will dominate. If there are more atoms in the lower energy state, then stimulated absorption will dominate, but their probabilities are same, which was predicted by none other than Einstein from his famous first equation, that is B12 equal to B21. From the second equation, we got A21 equal to B21 8 pi h nu cube by c cube. So the ratio between the spontaneous and stimulated emission is proportional to nu cube. A21 by B21 equal to 8 pi h nu cube by c cube. Here 8 pi h c, everything constant, because h is the Planck's constant, c is the velocity of electromagnetic radiation in free space. So A21 by B21 is proportional to cube of frequency of the emitted radiation. Cube of frequency of the emitted radiation. Now let us have some more important implications of the second equation. For that purpose, let us define a new parameter, say R, where R is defined as the ratio of rate of spontaneous emission to rate of stimulated emission. R, the ratio is defined as rate of spontaneous emission to rate of stimulated emission. Now just take a look. Under thermal equilibrium, this ratio, what is the value? Rate of spontaneous emission, we know A21 N2, and rate of stimulated emission, we have seen B21 N2 psi nu, because it is stimulated type. So psi nu factor is very much present here. Now just take a look. From numerator and denominator, N2 factor will cancel out. And what we will get? A21 by B21 into psi mu. So, under thermal equilibrium, the ratio R is defined to be equal to A21 by B21 psi nu by considering the ratio between rate of spontaneous emission to rate of stimulated emission. Now just take a look. A21 by B21 equal to 8 pi h nu cube by c cube. So, in the next step, A21 by B21 will be equal to 8 pi h nu cube by c cube divided by psi nu, which from the Planck's law gives us, for black body radiation, gives us e to the power h nu by kt minus 1. Because you already have seen that psi nu equal to 8 pi h nu cube by c cube into 1 by e to the power h nu by kt minus 1. So, if you put this value here, 8 pi h nu cube by c cube, you will get psi nu here, and R value will come out to be to the power h nu by kt minus 1. Now, you consider any ordinary optical source like say sodium lamp. Any ordinary optical source like say sodium lamp. So, what about T there? Or when it is the optical source, the temperature must be very high. It is of the order of 10 cube Kelvin. 10 cube Kelvin. And for visible light, the middle portion, if you consider, which is valid for the sodium yellow light also, that is 6000 angstrom. Nearly 6000 angstrom. And lambda equal to, we know C by nu, because C equal to nu lambda. So for any ordinary optical source like sodium lamp, T is 10 cube Kelvin and lambda is 6000 angstrom, because for sodium we know the mean lambda of D1 and D2 is 5893 angstrom. So you can consider 6000 angstrom not only for sodium, for any ordinary visible light. This is in the yellow range. That is the middle range of the spectrum. That's why. Now lambda equal to C by nu. So put the values here. H nu by kt. H is the Planck's constant. What is the value? 6.62 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule second. What is the value of nu? Lambda is given. So you can find out C by lambda as nu. Then K is the Boltzmann constant. You know the value. 1.38 into 10 to the power minus 23 joule per Kelvin. And T value is already given here. So if you put the value here and do the calculation, you will find that R will come out as much greater than 1. If you put the values here, you will find out R will come out as much greater than 1. Now what about R? R equal to rate of spontaneous emission to rate of stimulated emission, which is much greater than 1. That means rate of spontaneous emission or probability of spontaneous emission is much greater than the probability of stimulated emission. Since it is the rate, obviously probability will depend on the rate. So you can say that probability of stimulated emission is much less than the probability of spontaneous emission, because it is much greater than 1. So rate of spontaneous emission is much greater than rate of stimulated emission, or we can say probability of spontaneous emission is much greater than probability of stimulated emission. In that case, the light emitted by ordinary optical source is incoherent in character. This is the very important statement we are having from here. Light emitted by ordinary optical source is dominated by spontaneous emission, and since already we have discussed in our previous class that in case of spontaneous emission, there is no phase correlationship between the photons That's why the optical source is considered to be incoherent in character. So I think you are now understanding why Einstein's equations and coefficients are so much important, and how in the operation of the laser we consider the Einstein's theory to be the ultimate. Einstein's theory to be the ultimate still now. So I think all of you have enjoyed the Einstein's contributions. A great physicist, great man. In lot of areas, he has contributed single-handedly almost. And during case of laser, also the basic principle is given by none other than Einstein in the form of stimulated emission of radiation. I hope you got it. Now let us come to some university questions. Definitely based on the today's session and last two classes, I have discussed all the things, but now the way questions are set by university, let us take a look that what are the differences between ordinary light and laser light. I think all of you can answer it. The differences between ordinary light and laser light, definitely it will be given in terms of the four basic properties with which we started this chapter on laser. That is the property of the laser in the form of monochromaticity, directional, coherence, and intensified. Definitely, those properties are not present in case of ordinary light. So I think all of you got it, isn't that? Next question. Explain the transitions of spontaneous emission, stimulated emission, and stimulated absorption. In fact, in today's class also, I explained once more the transitions, though in the form of Einstein's coefficients, but in the very first class, we got the idea about these three basic possible transitions. One is the spontaneous emission and stimulated emission. That means two types of emission process, one in presence of photon, other in not in presence of photon, and then the absorption, which is always stimulated type in presence of photon. Next is compare between spontaneous emission and stimulated emission. Very, very important. Compare between spontaneous emission and the stimulated emission. Now, spontaneous and stimulated both are emissions. So, basic methodology is transition from 2 to 1. It is compared. It is not considered to be distinguished. It is compared. That means similarity and differences both you have to give. So if it is the case of emission, what type of emission they are, the transition always from 2 to 1. Now spontaneous means without any external energy support, the emission takes place. So the rate depends only on the population of higher energy state. But in case of stimulated emission, in presence of photon, the external electromagnetic radiation, it takes place. So definitely the rate depends on both the population in higher energy state as well as the energy density of radiation of the stimulating photon. Next question is, what is population inversion? Explain. Now, population inversion explanation in terms of the Boltzmann's curve we have done in the last class. Still, for your understanding, let us recapitulate it once more. Population, normal population trend is more atoms in lower energy state than that in the upper energy state, because it follows the Boltzmann distribution as n equal to n0 e to the power minus e1 e by kt, where n is the population in higher energy state with energy value E, and n0 is the population in the ground state with energy value 0. So exponentially decaying function. But in case of light amplification, where stimulated emission should overcome the stimulated absorption, we need more population in higher energy state. That's why we have to have more atoms in higher energy state than that in the lower. So you are inverting the normal trend as per Boltzmann's distribution. So this is called the population inversion. And obviously, with the help of the Boltzmann distribution curve, you will explain it. Next, how to achieve population inversion. Through pumping, you can achieve population inversion. Because there are more atoms in lower energy state, you need the atoms to move to higher energy state. So you have to raise them to higher energy state with some external agency. The process is called pumping. So we can achieve the population inversion through pumping. Now pumping can be done in different ways. I have give you the names only. In the next class, maybe we will discuss the different ways. Okay. Next is, what is optical resonator? What is optical resonator? Why do we need it? Optical resonator means you need the resonance condition to be satisfied for the stimulating and stimulated photon. And what about why it is optical resonator? Because basically it is an oscillator, but since it is in the optical range, so it is optical oscillator. And why resonator? Because here you have to maintain a resonance condition in the form of 2 pi by lambda into 2 times the length of the optical resonator equal to m times or n times 2 pi. So it is optical resonator. How it works already I mentioned. So you have to draw the diagram where and on both sides you have to keep the two mirrors which will reflect the photons back and forth to keep them confined within the neighborhood of the system of your working system known as the active medium. Now, what are the basic conditions for the operation of a laser? There are three basic conditions for the operation of a laser. One is the presence of metastable state. One of the excited states must be a metastable state. There must be population inversion and optical resonator must be present there. Optical resonator must be present there. So these are the basic conditions for the operation of a laser system, obviously, along with the three possible transitions. These three basic conditions must be associated with the three possible transitions in the form of the stimulated absorption, spontaneous emission, and stimulated emission. What are its basic components? That means what are its means laser systems basic components. The three basic components are there. One is the active medium. Active medium means collections of atoms, molecules, or the ions, but they must be capable of amplifying light waves in presence of population inversion. That's why that is called the active medium. That is one component. And second component, to achieve population inversion, you need the pumping device. You need the pumping mechanism and the corresponding devices are the second components. And third one, obviously, is the optical resonator. Otherwise, the photon containment is not possible. So the third component is the obviously optical resonator. And I think all of you can explain in much detail, isn't that? How light amplification can be achieved. That means how to increase the number of photons starting with 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, this way. If we consider no loss is there. The numbers what I am telling, that obviously will depend upon the fact that we are considering all photons are available in all stages, in stages after stages, though practically it is not possible, but definitely we try to minimize the losses with the arrangements already we have discussed. So how light amplification can be achieved? For that, we have to first satisfy the basic conditions. After that, you will start with the definitely one photon and the atomic system with population inversion. Then that photon will interact with any of the atoms in the higher energy state because probability of interaction will be very high as the population in higher energy state will be very high. That's why. And then after that, you will get the atoms will come down with the emission of the stimulating photons. And the process will continue, and you will get all photons which are coming out are of same energy, in same phase, in same direction. Naturally, their intensity will be very, very high. Discuss the working principle of a laser system. In fact, in the last class, in steps, I have done that. And today at the beginning, to give you the idea of the Einstein's contribution, I already discussed the working principle of the laser. And I think right now you are in a position to write many of the things about the working principle of a laser system. But mind it, you first consider the step and then explain as we have done in the class. So I think all possible explanations regarding the operations of a laser system with Einstein's contribution and Einstein's coefficients, Einstein's equations, and the implications, you got everything. And this is really the most important and interesting part of this laser chapter, or the contents you can say, because all the commercially operating lasers are also even based on these basic principles. So way back in 1917 the principle was given, though commercially it started running in the visible range in 1960. So I think all of you have enjoyed the class. So let us stop our session today. So thank you, my dear students. And again, we will meet in the next class. Okay? Till then, bye.